Good afternoon and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland and this week's Full Scottish on Sunday the 27th of July. My name is Brian Liddy and on the programme this week we're delighted that we're joined by Maureen Watt. Good afternoon, Maureen.
Good afternoon, Brian. Nice to be with you.
Thank you, and likewise. And we're also delighted to welcome Dr. Alan Flowers. Good afternoon, Alan. How are you?
Yes, good afternoon, and happy to be sitting here in Edinburgh, in my home in Edinburgh.
Thank you. Thanks for giving up a bit of your weekend for us. We start with today's Ukraine update. Ukraine's drone forces were on the attack against Russian strategic targets on Saturday and into Sunday. Drones hit the signal, radio and electronic warfare equipment plant in the Stavropol region, an official from Ukraine's SBU security service told reporters. The plant was one of Russia's leading producers of electronic warfare one of Ukraine's leading producers of electronic warfare equipment, including radar, radio navigation equipment and remote control radio equipment. Rosa Vaitsia, Russia's civil aviation authority, said again it had to shut down the airport serving the city of Volgograd as Ukrainian drones attacked soon after midnight on Sunday. Ukrainian drones also hit a railway power supply in the Volgograd region. Air raid alerts were introduced in several other regions in Russia's west and south, warning of Ukraine's drone attacks, according to posts by regional officials. Drones also targeted Moscow and an industrial facility in the Penza Oblast, southeast of the capital. Ukraine's regions of Dnipro in the south and Sumy in the northeast came under combined rocket and drone attacks on Saturday, local officials reported. Kharkiv sustained an intense aerial bombardment, with Ukraine's State Emergency Service reporting 6 people hurt, including 4 rescuers wounded in a double tap where a second attack targeted emergency workers trying to help the victims of the first. According to Ukraine's Air Force, Russia launched 208 drones and 27 missiles overnight into Saturday. It said, according to preliminary data, air defences and electronic warfare took down or intercepted 183 drones and 17 missiles, but hits from 10 missiles and 25 drones were recorded in 9 locations. Russia's defence ministry claimed its forces had captured 2 more villages in eastern Ukraine. Zelenyi High in the Donetsk region and Malivka just inside Dnipropetrovsk region. Forgive my mispronunciations. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Ukraine's top commander Oleksandr Syrsky had identified Pokrovsk as an area requiring special attention due to constant attack. Zelensky said Ukrainian forces had recorded successful actions in Sumy. An Indian firm that shipped $1.4 million worth of an explosive compound with military uses to Russia said on Saturday that it complies with Indian rules and that the substance was for civilian industrial purposes. The Indian company claims its shipment was for industrial activity and it's a civil explosive. The US government has identified HMX as critical for Russia's war effort. It's widely used in missile and torpedo warheads, rocket motors, exploding projectiles and plastic-bonded explosives for advanced military systems, according to the Pentagon's Defense Technical Information Center and related defense research programs. The compound also has limited civilian applications in mining and other industrial activities. Alan, we really don't have very much time to spare on this topic, but is there anything that you'd like to highlight from today's Ukraine update?
Well, yes, and I think we could reference viewers to an excellent, extensive commentary. It's available easily on YouTube by David Clark, who reports on Ukraine matters by TV. He's basically analysed that there's a very critical, it's now about 40 days left of the Trump 50-day deadline to Putin, and the fact that this creepage, I was very worried to hear that Dnipropetrovsk, the Dnipro region, Dnipro Oblast, has had an incursion. This is exactly the strategy that that Putin is carrying out creepage and trying to gain as much territory as possible before cornered into some form of a ceasefire, which is likely to delay until early September. And I thought David Clark very astutely pointed out there is a major event in China on the 3rd of September. Not many of us over here in the UK will be aware that China celebrates its end of Second World War. Not even in August as we celebrate VE Day, but that 3rd of September. Putin will be there. I think they're even trying to get Trump. Very major date. And Putin is doing everything he can to get as much of Ukraine as possible. So let's hope we're piling in everything we can. It's a really critical period, and I would hope Western leaders are aware they've really got to step up to the mark. I think we'll just leave it at that with a limited time because we have an excellent set of other topics to discuss today.
Thank you, Alan. And on that note, Maureen, do you mind if we move on to the Middle East update and I'll come to you first in response to that? Yeah,
Absolutely, it's fine.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. At least 59,733 Palestinians have been killed and 144,477 people have been wounded in Gaza since the 7th of October 2023. While about 1,000 people a week are being killed in Gaza by Israeli military attacks, disease and starvation are set to be the biggest killers in Gaza, despite international pressure finally forcing Israel to allow aid trucks in the Rafah crossing this morning. Maureen, there's no mention there of President Macron is going to acknowledge Palestine as a state, but is there anything that you'd like to highlight about what's going on in the Middle East and Gaza?
Well, it's just absolutely, virtually unwatchable to see all the pictures of starving children in Gaza at the moment. I mean, it is reminiscent of the concentration camps, and I cannot for the life of me understand why the Jewish people are not up in arms against their leadership, allowing this to happen. I agree that with Macron, I think now virtually the majority of the UN members are recognising the Palestine state, and I hope that Britain will when Parliament resumes. I'm glad that so many MPs have signed a motion calling for recognition of the Palestine state. I think at the moment it is absolutely imperative to focus on the humanitarian aid that needs to be get in there urgently. I worry about it being airdropped, but I think there are trucks coming in from both Egypt and Jordan today, and I hope as many as possible can get through so that we can see some respite for, as I say, the starving women and children and everybody really.
Thank you for that, Maureen. So yesterday Keir Starmer gave a speech about what's going on in Palestine, but he didn't mention that in response to that, I think the SNP have said that they're going to table a bill in September to force the UK government to recognise Palestine. Maybe can you tell us more about that?
Well, probably like you, I heard Stephen Gethin's on this subject this morning on the radio. That was the first I've heard of it. I mean, clearly, although we're not even the third party anymore, the SNP have been leading the opposition to the government's stance on Gaza, for months now, and that is to be welcomed. And I think the tabling of this bill, I mean, it's a long time yet before the Westminster Parliament resumes. They've just recently gone on recess. I can't remember when it is exactly, in September. And, time is of the essence right now. I don't know when and who will call for a recall of Parliament to discuss this, but I think it is so pressing that needs to happen. And Keir Starmer really needs to change his stance. If he's going to be consistent with his meeting with Trump whenever it is, tomorrow or whatever, and call for humanitarian aid for Gaza. He needs to follow that through logically and recognise Palestine's state.
Thank you, Maureen. Alan, I wonder if maybe did you see the front page of the Daily Express earlier this last week? Which said, "For pity's sake, stop this now," and showed a photograph of a starving, emaciated 1-year-old in Gaza, looking you right in the eye, looking into the lens of the camera. He said he was clinging on to life, and his suffering shames us all.
Yes, I certainly did. As an avid follower of TV programs that follow all the papers, I see all the headlines the night before. That just left me with one very, well, as I'm sure we all were, just hugely angry at what world leaders are really thinking and doing, all of them collectively. And I would be very bullish and really quite aggressive on this one. I mean, my disgust, mixture of disgust, emotion, and anger at that led me to wonder, what on earth is Egypt doing in all this? Report of massive aid piled up in Egypt on the border, just a few miles or tens of miles away from where these images are being taken. It's just beyond disgust and horror. No, I mean, I don't understand with all the potential force. I would actually be challenging an Israel and whoever are the people standing with guns on the border saying, no, this can't come through. Now, that is basically saying I would up the ante on the threat on this. In fact, we all know without even that, Mr. Trump, and I hope he gets a good dose of Scottish common sense breathed into him in the fine air of the Clyde estuary over these 48 hours or so. It really is. I think it's time for a massive, very imaginative rethink on this whole thing. I mean, it's great that Britain is in there, but it seems to be more really of a political statement. I gather from the authorities and international aid agencies that our drop of aid, apart from us Maureen quite correctly has expressed a concern over the dangers that we all saw the last time through airdrops, that it's only really, it can never be a minor contribution to the massive problem. And let's remember, there was not a famine issue until just the last few months. This war has gone on now for over 2 years. The world can see this is entirely Israel-induced human catastrophe. So, Mr. Trump and everybody else, either turn Israel off, or, it's regrettable if you have to use force in the end to solve a problem. But I would be starting to make very loud noises that I'm sorry, the world will not stand aside and let you guys on the border stop this aid. Very bullish view, I'm aware.
Thank you for that, Alan. You mentioned Trump in Ayrshire, which brings us neatly on to our next topic. Donald Trump is in Scotland for a private visit costing the US and Scottish government millions of pounds and dollars to pay for his security, as he's greeted by demonstrations across Scotland. He will meet with John Swinney, Keir Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen while he's here in Scotland. Alan, I wonder, did you see the Nationals? I keep asking you about headlines. Have you seen? Did you see the Nationals headline on Friday, which said convicted US felon is to arrive in Scotland?
Well, I didn't actually see that one, but I think, like every British taxpayer, I'd be hoping we're getting our money's worth out of this, because I always thought a private visit was meant to be just that. Private. Well, and if it's the police, it's our it's our funds, and it's my extra 2% or whatever it is I pay in Scottish taxes that has been used for this. And again, well, the same goes. No, I mean, there obviously some sort of deal had to be struck over this, and I've not seen the details. And Maureen, with her political insight, may know a little bit more about, what is the political justification of such substantial support funding. The problem is it's not quite 100% private. He's turned this in now to quite a significant international meeting. I think we're going to see Ursula von der Leyen discovering what Turnberry looks like in the near future, unless he's already relocated to Maureen's patch in Aberdeen. I mean, Maureen's got this coming right on our doorstep. I think is it later today. So I have to say, if we are paying to get something that will solve the enormous world's problems, Ukraine and Gaza, and now we got the Cambodia issue. I actually signed up for Trump Social or whatever it is, Truth Social, last night. I really avoided it, but I so much wanted to see what he was writing on this from Turnberry and to see what mood changes there were. I decided, and it was all about the Cambodia Thailand issue, which he seems to have now moved onto. But if he's mollified into a more benign sense towards solving the world's problems, and Keir Starmer and Ursula von der Leyen can give him a nudge in the right direction, then great. And I think we've got John Swinney in there, and the SNP's got a chance to get a word in his ear as well. So, that's maybe actually worth something.
Yeah, it sounds like deflection and distraction coming from Trump on Truth Social. Maureen, we were told that the First Minister was going to bring up Gaza when he meets Trump, and I can't help thinking that Ursula von der Leyen's presence in Scotland, it kind of brings Brexit into the mix. Is there anything that you can kind of tell us about? Was Gaza brought up?
Well, I don't. I'm retired now from Parliament, so I don't get the ins and outs of what's happening in the government. I read it just like anyone else in the press. But I'm absolutely sure, knowing John Swinney and having known him for many, many years, that he will bring up Gaza, as I'm sure all the political leaders that Donald Trump is meeting in his so-called private visit will bring up with him. I mean, I find it incredible, that someone can so easily mix up business interests with his political position as president of the US. I mean, you wouldn't get that in this country. All your business interests would have to be put over into a trust or whatever. So it's very difficult, to deal with this person who doesn't recognize any of the normal morals or principled way of doing things. However, he is in Scotland, and whether we like it or not, he is the president of the United States. So we have to make the best of it. I think the security, by the way, is just completely over the top. It's just ridiculous. What was it, about 15 or 20 golf buggies following him around? I mean, if I was him, I'd have told them to back off. But anyway, he obviously loves this kind of protection that he gets. But how you can concentrate on your golf when you've got all this entourage following you is beyond me. But I hope that he's watching the television in Scotland while he's here and seeing how Gaza is top of the agenda, everybody's agenda. And I'm sure it will be with the political leaders who meet him. As I say, I'm sure it will be on top of John Swinney's agenda in meeting him. And clearly we have to use the opportunity, whether we like it or not, to promote Scotland's interests in the States. And if he is so proud of his Scottish roots, surely we should get a bit of payback, if you like, on that in terms of lowering tariffs on whiskey and our great food products that are exported to the US. But I look forward to hearing the reports afterwards of all the meetings with the leaders.
Thank you, Maureen. Yeah, it's as if everybody's coming to Scotland this weekend. Alan, Again, I'm going to ask you, did you see the American artist based in Edinburgh, Joseph Delap? He's going to do a performance called Sorry at Aberdeen Airport, where he just sets up a desk and you can go and sit and he will apologise to you about America and Trump. Did that catch your eye maybe? Or
Oh, yes. I just wish he was doing it down in Edinburgh Airport. I would nip around 15 minutes away from where I'm talking to you. Brilliant. Yeah, I have to say, having been in Ukraine recently, I discovered more than just him apologizing for America. I was just so proud to be not just British, but a Scottish British, where we don't quite have so much to apologize for. Yep. Um, leave it there. I wonder if he's going to do something. What he's going to be doing during the Edinburgh Fringe and Festival. I'm sure the timing is pretty good for protest art.
thank you, Alan. Maureen, well, no, I'll ask you. Apparently, Wall Street Journal was removed from the press pool covering the Trump's visit this weekend. Have you heard anything about that? Or?
Yes, I did read that. I don't think they've got that much access to Trump, have they? Because, I mean, he clearly doesn't like the Wall Street Journal. I think most recently it's because of the Wall Street Journal's headlines over the Epstein case, which seems to be gripping the US media and actually population at the moment. I think, though even the strongest MAGA supporters are against are turning against him because of the Epstein saga, and for goodness sake, if we see Ghislaine Maxwell getting a pardon, that'll just be the worst thing that could possibly happen, and kind of, to me, confirm that Trump has got more connections with Epstein than perhaps have come out already. I mean, he just can't deny it, can he? Because there are several photographs and film footage of him with Epstein. So anything that turns the US population against Donald Trump is to be welcome, but whether it'll just be like water off a duck's back, which seems to be the case with many of his felons in terms of his popularity in the US, we'll have to wait and see, or if it's the start of a gradual decline in his popularity, which I think everybody would have fingers crossed about it on this side of the pond. We'll have to wait and see.
Thank you, Maureen. And just briefly, Alan, and finally, bringing it back to Scotland and Trump's visit to Scotland and the cost to police Scotland. The First Minister, in a statement, he said that he was confident that Scottish people would would peacefully protest and not cause any trouble. And he was criticised for that, as some people said he was putting out a call or a dog whistle to anti-Trump supporters. Have you seen anything of the protesters?
Well, anything I've seen seems to have been extremely sensible and peaceful, as I would expect. I mean, the problem is in any society, you're going to get an extreme section. It's a question of what the balance is. But as somebody who's organised protests and marches in London myself, I've always experienced the authorities and support from the police. If you keep within the law, they will support you. And I think any sensible protest group that wants to get their message across plays by the game, and they'll get all the support and they'll get their voice heard. So I'm pretty appalled at that analysis of, and also both the analysis that the Scottish protesters would perhaps cause too many issues. Yep.
Of course, thoughts to
So we keep peaceful.
yes, and of course thoughts to Janie Godley when we just touch on Trump and protesters in Scotland.
But I'd like to add, well, we're just closing the Trump thing just very briefly. I've just decided, I hadn't looked up my Truth Social this morning since I'm a new subscriber since last night for the first time. This man doesn't seem to get any sleep. I've got a couple of messages here that are actually about American politics. He's clearly messaging to the people in America, and he's still on American time. 1:30 in the morning, he was doing one thing, and there's another one here timed around about 3:30 in the morning. Now that's 10:30 New York time, and another 3 hours. It's 7:30. He's sitting in Turnberry on American time. It seems. I'm not quite sure what time he gets going in the morning there. I haven't seen that reported. It was a fair round of golf he had yesterday.
Maybe it's the long days, the light nights here in Scotland are kind of getting to him a bit. But we'd best move on. So, as organised
Yep.
right-wing demonstrations against asylum seekers take place in England, businesses in Scotland are calling for a Scottish work visa to bring workers to Scotland to grow the economy. Why do UK politicians and the media conflate refugees with migrant workers? Because it's true, isn't it, Maureen? If you're an asylum seeker, then that's not the same as a doctor who maybe just simply wants to come to Scotland to work.
Yes, and the asylum seekers and the migrants coming across in boats are a very, very small percentage of the total migration into the UK. And we don't hear about that apart from perhaps annual figures now and again. And that is is it like something like 750,000 last year? So, as I say, the migrants on the boats are a very, very small percentage of that, but yet the right wing focus on that because it gives them something to hang their anti-migrant stance onto. Um, and clearly, the people who come here are ones who are required to keep the economy in Britain going, because otherwise we wouldn't have those working in our health services, our hospitality services, and agricultural, horticultural sectors, who do all the basic work in these sectors. So we never get the full picture on the British media, who seem to kowtow to reform and their agenda. So yes, actually it's really interesting that Scottish businesses are now calling for a Scottish immigration visa, and shows how desperate they are for workers, because clearly John Swinney has been calling for that for a long time, and it's good that he's got business backing now. Whether it will happen, I doubt, but I think we have to keep the pressure up on the UK government on this, because clearly we have lots of jobs that are requiring to be done but can't be, because, and we can't see the growth in the economy if we don't have these people helping us out.
Thank you, Maureen. Yep, it sounds like I get this as Brexit again. Alan, asylum seekers in the UK are barred from working while their claims being processed, but I mean they can get permission, can be applied for after they've been waiting for a year. But apparently that's a policy, as Maureen hinted at, that's a policy that Scots reject. According to a recent poll, some 62% of Scottish adults said that people who are waiting for work should be able to work while they're waiting for their application to be processed.
Yes.
Is there anything that... Yeah, on you go.
Very much so. I mean, I really should declare an interest on both aspects of this. Firstly, on the migration, the Scottish work visa. I own a couple of holiday lets in the northwest of Scotland. It's an area my wife grew up in. In fact, one of the houses we recently put into a heritage trust she was christened in. So we're very familiar with the area, with in our case, a 70-year plus history of awareness. And as Maureen's rightly, and I'm glad to see the SFP is recognising, well known, the Scottish hospitality industry, the situation is absolutely dire. And this is just, I mean, we got the COVID hit and we got the Brexit hit on top of it with a workforce. And it is a reality. People, our neighbours and neighbourhood around there, we're talking about west of Scotland, around the Kinloch-Bervie area, a bit isolated, but workers would come over the summer in the past, up to about the year 2000, 2001. It's on its knees. Very difficult to get staff, hotels, limiting, closing down. And on the asylum one, I'm chair of the Anglo-Belarusian Society. I'm speaking independently here, I should point out. So I'm very close to almost all the claim cases for Belarusians, and rightly they can get by a somewhat complex arrangement to work. We've had a couple of recent cases like that while their asylum claim was being considered. So yeah, I'm fully supportive of the uh, action to enable people to work, and that, but it should be much simpler and more straightforward. And most of them are highly motivated. They've come because the chances are they're pretty good English speaking, if not fluent English speaking, and ready to work. In fact, much less of an issue. I mean, I'm all fully supportive of our Ukraine scheme, but the Ukraine scheme really has put quite a load on local authorities because you're dealing with people who have almost probably no English. Quite difficult to get into the workforce. Why we can't deal and make it easy for people who are ready and able to work in a range of skills and professions defeats me. And more power to the arm of John Swinney. Very, very pleased that SNP is coming around behind the hospitality industry and all, of course, the support. We've got hospitals to think about and the staffing there. And yeah, I fully support Maureen's comments. And in fact, she's spot on with having to identify these immigration. The other one, of course, that's important is the net figure, because it's been very noticeable uh, uh, that a lot of people are leaving Britain these current years. And so I think there was a net figure last year of about 450,000 plus increase into the UK.
Thank you, Alan. And
I think
yes,
one of the other, if I could just come back on this, excuse me, is that one of the side effects of not of housing migrants in hotels and not getting them immediately into work is that they can be siphoned off into the black market. And that's happening, I think, more than most people realise. And of course, what goes on in the black market doesn't contribute to the figures in the economy. It's often seedy things like, being employed on cannabis farms and things like that. And very, horrible work and sort of, slavery. So I really think that the UK government needs to rethink the way that migrants, what they would call illegal migrants, are treated, and how they are housed and what happens to them.
thank you, Maureen. I was actually going to ask you about something allied to that. The Home Office is going to share information about asylum seekers' hotel locations with food delivery companies like Deliveroo, because apparently Deliveroo drivers are sharing their passes with asylum seekers so that they can get some work. But that the SNP have hit out at the Labour government, saying that the way their harsh measures against asylum seekers is really just to combat Reform UK. Do you think, is that correct?
Well, I hadn't heard that, so I can't comment with any knowledge behind it. But yes, I mean, you can see that sort of thing happening quite regularly, I suppose. And often the delivery drivers and in organisations, companies like Deliveroo, are people who have come to this country. So, yeah, I can quite see that happening. And I think, as I said previously, if the UK government took a different approach, then I think people would be. I mean, you'll always get the hard right who don't think anybody should come to this country, regardless of the effect that it has on the economy. But I think most people would want to see asylum seekers gainfully employed in jobs that require to be done and aren't being done by people already here, rather than being targets in hotels wherever they are throughout the country, and people like the Reform Party prying. No, what's the word I'm looking for? Playing on people's fears rather than embracing people coming to this country.
Thank you, Maureen. And so moving on to the next item, nuclear energy. And nuclear energy is a 20th century energy solution, but it's a solution that is creating 21st and 22nd century nuclear waste is piling up. So why is the UK government committing to billions of pounds on nuclear power stations when there's better, cleaner solutions which are less expensive and faster to build? Alan, I think it's your turn to answer a question first. Have you been following Ed Miliband and his nuclear tax on Scottish electricity users?
Well, I don't know the specific details of the Scottish tax, but once again, I have to declare a very significant interest in all this. For many years, I owned and ran a business in radiation protection, and I was extremely engaged in the radiation protection and safety aspects of the last large nuclear reactor to be in the UK, which was, of course, Sizewell B, that was completed 30 years ago this year, back in 1995. I have to challenge the statement about the issue of cheaper, less expensive, and cleaner. And there is a balance, and I won't go into my. By the way, I lectured and learnt my music here in this fine city of Edinburgh, Edinburgh University. So I've had some 50 years professional in this field and lectured often. So I won't bore the listeners here with detailed statements. Is I hate dogmatism, of which there is far too much, and I'm afraid a lot of unknowing and scientifically very ill-informed debate about nuclear energy. I mean, I think Scotland's done very well with the balance. I remember in the mid-80s when Sizewell B was getting going. Wind was also strongly reckoned. I knew very well a great Professor Swift with the old Central Electricity Generating Board, the English lot. Promoting, pushing wind as hard as he could. Well, the huge offshore wind that Scotland has, more power to the elbow of that. I have to say, I'm not convinced we got the balance right between land. So we have to be careful about the way we manage our renewables, and it is leading to degrees of opposition about wind power. But let me just close this first opening section by reminding your audience that bluish grey block that you see when you travel by road or train down the A1 or the railway line just after Dunbar in the east coast of Scotland is an entity called Torness Nuclear Power Station. It can supply a peak load now, somewhere between 10 to 20% of all of Scotland's electricity requirement, and it's been beating its heart out since 1988. We're coming up for nearly 40 years of that. And I don't think we came to an accommodation with the fishermen of the Forth Estuary, the people in the surrounding area. I would postulate that not only can we live with nuclear energy in Scotland, but we have verifiably and very observably been living with it. Of course, not just for the 40 years nearly of Torness, which is I noticed checking today, it's pumping out quite a healthy gigawatt or so of electricity, and there's there's ways you can keep, maintain, and service these to extend lifetimes well past 40 years. Yep, materials obviously needs managed, but careful management and good quality as it was, Scottish building and engineering, it sees us through. So we've got the capability. I think small modular reactors, that's where the government's been putting a bit of money. Rolls-Royce, we've been into the technology, proven technology, go with it. I'm no longer in the industry, so it's not a present safety thing. But you've got somebody who is in danger of lecturing at length on the benefits and the way in which you can manage. It's like most modern technology, the wrong human beings managing the wrongly engineered, that's going to be a catastrophe. So, but that's in many areas of modern technologies. Well managed, well engineered, well built, well maintained. You're home and dry, and it's a contributor. I'm not saying the only one. And more power to wind, hydro. Scotland is a real world example of renewables and carbon-free energy.
Thank you, Alan. Maureen, do you want to respond to that? Do you think the do you think the Scottish government should have agreed to new nuclear power stations in Scotland when the UK government offered them?
Well, I'll start by saying it's with some trepidation that I come in to comment on this at all, given Alan's professional background in this field. So I think, I would like to, second what Alan said about Scotland being in a unique, virtually, position with so many renewables around its shores, whether it be wind, wave, or whatever. And now solar power is, there to be used, even although we don't think the sun shines as much. It's not reliant so much on that. So, but what I'd like to say is England, energy policy is still a reserved issue. But I think I commend the Scottish Government on the way that they are pressing ahead with renewables. And I think I would only say that in terms of Sizewell and Hinkley, the costs of them are already running into the billions and now doubled and likely to double again before they start generating any electricity. Now, every government can choose how it provides power to its citizens, but I think that Scotland is taking the right path on going hard on renewables. Clearly, we need baseload energy, and whether we like it or not, we're still going to rely on oil and gas for a good few years to come. We have wonderful hydro stations that can provide baseload too. I think, as Alan said, Torness is still on the go. I visit Dunbar a lot. My family are there. But I think, like any nuclear power station, a lot of the time, some of the reactors are closed down because of problems with the reactors. So I don't, as I say, other countries can do what they want. I wouldn't like to live in a country that has so many reactors, because we can see how they can be a focal point for our enemies. And if something does go wrong, then it goes catastrophically wrong. So I think, given Scotland is in this unique position where it has such a vast potential in renewables, I think we should be going down that route.
Thank you, Maureen. Alan, we've got a minute left on this topic. If there is anything that you'd like to add.
I'm glad you have. I wanted to show you my exhibit. I dug this out. That pile of paper is the Sizewell B public inquiry that was published 40 years ago, 1985. Horrendous. We got it a bit better for Hinkley Point. That actually got its planning public inquiry through in 1990. A QC, Michael Barnes, who I actually knew personally very well, saw it through in a different way. And in that respect, the whole question of planning, and Maureen, actually, I agree 100% with your position, perhaps with just slight moderation. I think there's room for a balance, a 10-20% level there. Nuclear, I would always argue for that under all the sort of conditions I think you would want met. But we got things wrong when the Tory government in the 1980s, policy pro-nuclear, crashed headlong into their policy privatisation. And this is another area where privatisation, trying to raise funds for nuclear power stations, has been an absolute disaster. We were meant to have 4 nuclear power stations. By the way, Sizewell B at present values would have cost in present day values about 6 billion or so. It actually was a very cost effective, built to cost and to time actor, but that was under the old DGB government oversight system. We then scrapped 3 out of the 4 that we were meant to be building late 80s into the 90s on the basis the private sector would pick it up. Well, as we saw, the private sector didn't pick it up. And when it did, Maureen's quite right about the cost overruns. It's been a complete catastrophe. Ergo, contrast France, that would never dream of running in the commercial sector. And look at how China just gets ahead, does it? Any of the state-run areas of nuclear, they've actually worked well for the people and pretty cost effectively as a good base load. Sorry to maybe divert closing on that one, but I think we got a chance in Scotland that we could maybe try and get this right. I think we were going to try and very quickly talk about Scottish Water. I'd like to get us back to Scottish nuclear in a very similar management system as we once did have, actually.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I suppose it's worth saying that there is, of course, tidals coming down the line, which is 24 hours a day, no wind, no sunshine required. But water everywhere, but not a clean drop to drink in England. While England's privatised water companies' executive wages increase, pollution in England's waterways continue to rise. When the UK government's Environment Secretary, Steve Reid, claimed earlier this week that Scotland's, more than once in the media, claimed that Scotland's nationalised water was also polluted, the media accepted and repeated his unfounded lies without question. This was obviously intended to undermine the Scottish government, while at the same time was to resist calls to nationalise English water. So the nationalised Scottish water was used by Steve Reid as a proof that nationalisation does not work. Because look, Scottish water is even more polluted than English water. Maureen, I guess you've been following this story.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite unbelievable. Who on earth advised Steve Reid that it was a good idea to attack Scotland on the issue of water? I mean, I think it's because they are completely and utterly embarrassed about how good Scotland's water is doing under nationalisation. Labour, remember, used to be the party of nationalisation compared to the disaster of privatised water in England. And I mean, to attack Scotland on its cleanliness of water is absolutely incredible, really. I mean, I don't know if any of you saw the wonderful video that Gillian Martin did in her wetsuit at Cruden Bay, talking about the cleanliness of Scotland's water compared to England, and then running into the water to have a swim on our wonderful clean beaches that we have in Scotland. It was absolutely brilliant. But I mean, how he got himself in such a mess like this, I don't know. Why he didn't just apologise and say they've got the figures wrong, to me seems unbelievable. But our clean water doesn't come, without a lot of work by Scottish Water. And, obviously, like every other company, they have to keep investing, but still we managed to do that with lower bills than in England. And another thing that I really like about Scottish Water is the work that they do under the auspices of their offshoot, Scottish Water International, where the wonderful engineers in Scotland go and help other countries. So I remember when I was on the infrastructure committee, there was a bill that went through. I can't remember what it was called. It was about Scottish Water, but anyway, we were helping cities in India with their sewerage and wastewater plants and things like that. So Scottish Water does a huge amount internationally in terms of sharing their knowledge and their knowledge with other countries. And I think we should be really, really proud of the fact that we have public water supply, because water is a right for everybody to have, and should be something that's in the public sector. And I think the way that English water companies have got away with, as you said, spending so much on top executives' pay and on investors' dividend is absolutely criminal in my view.
Thank you, Maureen.
Here, if I could
Yeah, just a couple of figures, Alan, before I come to you. Maureen, you hinted it'd be Scottish water's cheaper in Scotland. Scotland's system is cheaper for consumers, largely because it avoids shareholder payouts and prioritises investment. It's £113 cheaper in Scotland than in England. Scotland's public system invests more in infrastructure, reduces inefficiency and leaks, and supports long-term sustainability. Again, you said that, Maureen. I didn't know about the international side of that. Scotland's public system delivers better environmental outcomes with cleaner rivers and less sewage dumping, and Scotland's system's more financially stable, avoiding the debt-driven model of England's privatised companies, and Scotland's system enjoys greater public trust and accountability due to its public ownerships and transparency. Alan, my question to you is that, so has Reid misled Parliament when he answered Stephen Flynn and repeated once again that water in Scotland was more polluted than in England? And if he has misled Parliament, should he resign?
I'll resign or apologise. By the way, 100% agreement with Maureen, who so eloquently put the point, but it's something very close to me because I've just recently sold up my property that I had the misfortune to be in the Thames water region, which sends shivers down the spine of anybody who knows what it was like to be trying to deal with a water leak under your house for about 3 years, getting it wrong. I mean, a chief executive, whose company is badly managed and uncoordinated in its actions. It's just beyond belief. And shareholders seem to be left powerless in these things for various reasons. Big institutions hold most of the shares. They don't want to rock the boat, and they just seem to wave these things through, probably for their buddies at the same London club or something. As somebody who's suffered under Thames water and also enjoyed the wonderful pleasure of the delicious water I can drink from the Pentland Hills here in South Edinburgh, and often boast to my visiting international friends the history of the water supply from Glencorse Reservoir, and I've got a very historic 18th century, even going back to 17th century cistern, not less than a mile away from me here. So we have a long tradition of service in the provision of water to the public in this great country, and something else we can be very, very proud of. But I like Maureen, I'm absolutely appalled at what has been stated, and there's an urgent need for a withdrawal. It's a pity Parliament isn't sitting right now, because there would have been a real opportunity to round on this individual. So let's see how that runs. Somehow, for some reason, probably is for political reasons, I think Maureen's got it absolutely 200% there. He's blurted all this out, and that needs redress, because unfortunately there's probably English people, if they've only ever suffered Thames water, they think we get the same nonsense up here in Scotland. We demonstrably don't. Had a wonderful septic tank pumping operation managed by Scottish Water just 2 or 3 weeks ago. Absolutely, absolutely problem-free, very efficiently, effectively carried out. Great communications. Wonderful organisation will actually pick up the phone to the client instead of having to wait for ages, possibly even over an hour, where you get music played to you and nobody answers the phone. Dreadful down south, wonderful Scottish Water. Can't sing the praises higher from personal experience.
Thank you, Alan. And here in Glasgow,
Unlike
a lot of
somebody who pronounces politically.
Thank you. Yeah, now a lot of our water here in Glasgow comes from Loch Katrine since the 19th century. Maureen, just very quickly again, Maureen, do you think Steve Reid should resign?
Well, it so rarely happens these days compared to, the 60s and 70s and 80s that I remember. Just an apology would be, nice, to recognise that Scotland does not just water better, but other things better than the UK government. Sometimes might might make Labour look a bit better in Scotland if they were really wanting to do that. But I suppose it's grist in the mill to the SNP. I mean, Scottish Water don't get everything right, but one of the things that Scottish Water does is engage with communities. I mean, for example, at NIG wastewater treatment, we had terrible smells at one time, and they spent a huge amount of money putting in new filters and things. I think the same happened in Seafield in Edinburgh. So, the Scottish Water engage with a community, probably something that Thames Water never does. So we don't always get things right, but they're there and respond when people complain.
Thank you, Maureen. And we're out of time, which is my fault entirely. I'm happy to take the blame for that. But would you both be willing to stay on for an extra minute to tackle the last topic quickly?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay, thank you both. So, as Sir Keir Starmer appoints the ex-Sun editor David Dinsmore to his staff, what does it say about the relationship between the government and the UK government and media? Just for context, Steve Dinsmore, while he was editor of The Sun in 2014, he was named Sexist of the Year after a poll by a feminist campaign coalition called End Violence Against Women. The Sun at the time was still publishing topless women models on page 3, which it didn't stop doing that until 2015. Maureen, what's your take on this new appointment?
Plus ça change. It's happened under various governments, and I'm sure will continue to happen. As I say, it's nothing new, but not a good look.
Thank you. Alan, do you want to start your weekend and just go to the close, or would you like to make a comment briefly?
Oh, just briefly, couldn't agree more. And I suggest you look up Companies House to see how many companies in the news industry he's got a vested in. Highly questionable appointment. One really wonders if emotion. I gather that he impressed him in some interview recently, and was his government communications director or something or other. Yeah, very questionable.
Yeah, okay, and of course I didn't mean to say to start your weekend, I meant to get back to your weekend, which I'll let both of you do that now. Thank you very much. Well, that's it for this week's Full Scottish, but before we go, I just want to remind you that here at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of our supporters. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, we thank you very much. We can only exist with your support. We cannot exist without your support, forgive me. Our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please do consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, or please simply donate whatever you can afford. But thank you once again to both of our guests, to Maureen Watt and to Dr. Alan Flowers. Thank you very much. And goodbye, and thank you for watching.